All right, good morning. It's Bernard Nomberg with another weekly episode of Nomberg Law Live. Come to you every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I've got my buddy Guy DiMartino with me today. Good morning, Guy. How are you doing, friend?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Bernard. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now I know you have offices in Indiana and in Florida. Where are you coming to us today?
I'm coming to you from Leesburg, Florida, just outside Orlando.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Guy, before we jump into a host of topics today, tell everybody a little bit about yourself personally and your practice.
Sure. Grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Like every New Yorker, I moved to South Florida, went to high school and graduated high school in South Florida. My first career was that as a chiropractic physician. I went to the National College of Chiropractic in Lombard, Illinois, practiced chiropractic for just under 20 years. 1999, I was getting a little tired of healthcare, lived in a town in northwest Indiana called Valparaiso. Might know them from Sweet 16 a few years ago.
That's
Maybe
right,
it's
Valpo.
more than a few years ago now. And Bryce Drew. And so I decided to try the law school thing. I went to the law school there. And then in 2003, I decided I wanted to come back to Florida to be closer to my parents who were getting older. And so then my daughter went ahead and grew up, and she decided to have a child. So we had a grandchild. So now we moved back to Indiana like 5 years ago. So now I split my time between Central Florida and Indiana. So that's sort of the background or where I've been and why I have my feet in both places.
Excellent. Well, it's Guy. You and I have known each other for a couple of years now, virtually, and then we've also been able to break bread together and go to conferences. And when my daughter was down in Orlando at Rollins, we got to hang out a little bit. So I've always appreciated our friendship, and I truly appreciate the uniqueness that you bring to not only the practice of law, also to the practice of medicine. But I don't know if you threw in the fact that, oh, by the way, you're also ordained as a priest.
I am.
So
I'm a priest in the Anglican Catholic Church, which very similar to the Episcopal Church, except we hold to the older line and the more conservative branch of what the Episcopal Church is. And I help take care of a church in Winter Haven when I'm in Florida. And right now I'm assisting a church in northwest Indiana in Maryville, Indiana, when I'm up there.
Well, there's so many topics, there's so many areas that we could touch on. I know in the past, you and I've been on your show where we've talked about the intersection of sports, work comp, medical, when we talked about the football player who got hurt playing for the Rams and all of that took place a couple of years ago. That was a very interesting and fun talk for me, so I appreciate that. But I think today we're going to touch on something a little broader, a little more philosophical, a little more how it is and why it is we are what we are. But before we jump into that, I want to say hi to our mutual buddy Mo up in Huntsville, Alabama, who's watching us. Good morning, Mo. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
Hey, Mo.
Guy, you and I talked the other day. We were trying to come up with what would be a different kind of a topic. And both of you and our lives have intersected in the legal field, technology field, and a couple of related areas. But what we're really, as this is a bigger topic, is more of a human interest approach. And how is it, and what's our background? How did we become lawyers? Why did we become lawyers? What's our driving force? I think that I want to kind of head down that path a little bit. And I think you know what I'm talking about, at least in general. So I guess I want to ask you to kind of jump start us, and I'll jump in between. How did you get to where you are? What's driven you to become a lawyer? What drives you? What's your passion in the areas that you practice?
Well, so, when I was younger, I didn't give much thought. But now that I'm, approaching the middle age, I've really been given that much thought. And I've got this thing within me. It's all about like fairness and all about the underdog. And so recently I was thinking about that and I was like, well, where did all this come from? And I pinpointed it to something that happened in the 1970s. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a place called Coney Island, which is out in the water, and it's known for being a tourist area. And in our town, one of the now I know mobsters, the Colombo family, and now I'm getting to a story. Actually, they were very big in that area, Bensonhurst, Sheepshead Bay, Coney Island. And they started this group called the Italian American Civil Rights League. And I'll never forget this. I was 7, maybe 8 years old, and the Italian American Civil Rights League thought that they were being treated unfairly by law enforcement. And we went, and I was out there, and we marched on the FBI building in Manhattan. And they had all these coppers, all these law enforcement folks that were on horseback, and they had us off, and then there were some people who had a little bit of a scuffle. But I remember we were saying, the chant was, "Heedy, heedy, heidi ho, the FBI has got to go." And that I really didn't think about that until just recently in the last few years. Like, why do I have this thing with the underdogs? And let me give it to you. Being as a chiropractor, underdog. Being as a priest in the Anglican Catholic Church as opposed to the Roman Catholic Church, underdog. Growing up in a yeshiva school, being married to a Jewish mother, being baptized in the Roman Catholic Church, underdog. And so then when I gravitated to the practice of law, it was all about helping the underdog. And I've pretty much always done that. For a short period, when I was transitioning from Indiana to Florida, I worked for a relatively large insurance defense firm in the Orlando area, but it just didn't cut good against the way I believe, or what really drives me. So that was a long story, and I'm sorry, Bernard, but
Fascinating.
So there we go.
Fascinating. It kind of reminds me a little bit. We've both heard our buddy from St. Louis, Jim Hacking, talk about the type of work that he started doing when he came out of law school. I believe he was in the shipbuilding or the shipyard representing some of those large companies, and it just didn't fit with him. And we all know he does immigration work. You talk about the ultimate underdog. That's what Jim's practice is all about. But my story is not as interesting as yours. I'm just thinking, as a 7-year-old, what an impression that must have made on you to be able to be not just standing on the sidelines, but being a participant. You must have gone through a range of emotions as a little guy. I don't mean that literally, or maybe I do. As a youngster, you're seeing all these grown adults of authority figures. And it must have made just a tremendous impression on you that it came back to you that put you on your way.
Yeah. So that's sort of what transpired. It's interesting. They usually say what? We spend the next 50 getting over the first 5.
That's right.
So it's funny. Some of those things when we're really young that we don't think motivate us or shape our view of life and society. When we get older and we recollect on that stuff, sometimes we see that it does.
I want to welcome Chelsea and others who joined us to watching. We'd love to hear your stories, your backdrop, your background, how you got your start, if you're in the law, whatever your profession may be. But Guy, I grew up in my father's law office in Dothan, Alabama, and Dad practiced law for well over 40 years in our hometown. He's now happily retired on the Gulf Coast. But what the biggest impression on me was who he represented, and that was people who were injured on the job. And there's no better example to me is when you have a person who is typically a blue collar, an hourly wage person who may or may not even have any benefits like health insurance, they get hurt on the job. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with anything they've done. It's an accident. It's something that happens. They're hurt. So all of life's stresses just ramp way up. Your health, your finances, how are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to put food on the table? The communication within your family. How are you going to get better? All of those things ramped up. And I saw how our dad was able to provide answers to get not always about money. So most of the time it was, but it was really just to help de-stress them by helping guide them through the process, getting them the proper medical care that the insurance companies should provide, getting them the compensation in a timely way. And all of that made such an impression on me. It was rarely about a big check, because in the world of work comp in Alabama, there really is no such thing. It was just providing fairness, equaling the playing field, so to speak. You've got the individual who's hurt, then you on the other side, you've got the corporation, the company, the insurance carrier, whoever it is. And Dad was able to provide that balance for the injured worker, make them feel assured of what was going on, comfort them, whatever they needed, really almost acting as a counselor, as a provider of information, if you will. That always struck with me, and I knew that I was going into the law since I was a little kid, and that really kind of paved the way for what I do today and what my brother, who's my partner, we do today.
It's amazing how so there again, it's not what your dad told you, it was what you observed. If you were around or if you went out in town, it's what you actually observe. Sort of like our friend John Fisher. He just reported something on Facebook where he was out at a courthouse and an older gentleman comes up to him and he says, "Are you John Fisher Sr.'s, for lack of a better, son?" He goes, "Well, let me tell you a story. Your dad represented somebody against me 40 years ago, and I was pro se. But your dad thought that his client was misbehaving and wasn't treating me fairly, and he advocated for me, and that is just something else." And so here was John Fisher's dad 40 years ago impacting this fella, where 40 years later he sees his son and he had to walk up to him. And they were on the other side of the coin. They were on the other side of the V. And I can tell you in the 20 years that I've been doing this, we've seen a lot of that civility, going by the wayside. But I always try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I always give people breaks. I always give people extensions of time until they've abused it or until they have done something, because we all have so much. I can tell you, Bernard, in the last year, I know 5 lawyers who were in the 50 to 60-year-old range who have died.
Oh, my.
Some of them by their own hands, and then another one who was shot by a client who came to his house and shot him. And, it's just not worth it. You know what I mean? And one of the gentlemen that killed himself in November, I was a member with him at the Inns of Court, and I was talking to him just 4 days before he passed away. And he was telling me about some health problems, and I spoke to him, and I stood with him for an hour after the Inns of Court, but he never said, "I'm in trouble," because I would have done anything for him. He never just reached out and said, "I'm in trouble." And then that weekend, he ended up killing himself. And so, as lawyers, we have people on the other side who are trying to beat us down. We have the court, or we have a third party, or a judge, or a jury who, puts things off. We have, the internet and our clients. And so we have everything coming at us. And I just feel like this guy just had all the stuff coming at us. And when you look at what people do when they end up committing suicide, it's because they didn't see any hope. They didn't have any despair. And we have to realize, and what's so good about the community that you belong to and I belong to and the groups that we belong to is that we really try to support each other. Because otherwise we're just out there in an island. You know what I mean? So we're able to connect with people who are, who are like-minded. Like you and I, we like to exercise. You're Jewish. I mean, if you talk to a Jewish person, I'm Jewish. I went to yeshiva school, even though, you know what I mean? We grew up in the same thing. We have kids that we adore. We like sports. We like the technology. We like doing this Facebook Live, and we like helping people. You know what I mean? And so that's why people like you and I are connected. And that's why, if Mo's still here, why we're connected to Mo. Because in a way, I wish I was sort of like Mo. Because he has something about him where he draws people to him. It's just a nice, down-home type of, way. And in a way, I look at Mo and say, I wish I had some of those mannerisms. So, I mean, the groups that we belong to and our relationships has just, I get down sometime, but I can just jump on with you or Mo or, Seth Price, when I was going through a breakup with my partner, he was just, he called me all the time or sent me a text saying, how are things going? So
you're so right, Guy. The communities, the online communities that you and I both belong to, predominantly are lawyers, most everybody in there. That's one of the commonalities. But Mitch's group, Tyson and Jim's group, they have fostered such communities that we're able to freely share. I know so many people in both of those groups. There's so many things about each one of those people that really attracts and draws me to them for these friendships. I've yet to meet Nicole or Nick in person, but I feel like I've known them for years. I see them once or twice a week, at least an hour each time, and I know about them personally. They know about me personally because of that groups or the communities that are being fostered that we're part of. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be included, and that goes to our clients as well. And I've got a comment here from Chelsea that I want to share with you. She really likes this topic, and we appreciate you sharing what you had to say, Chelsea. She works with business owners, and sometimes as an outside, she sees that they're caught up in the day-to-day routine, the what needs to be done for the business, and sometimes they lose their why. And you're right, it is so important to stay motivated and driven. You've got to sometimes kind of reset yourself. Why I do what I do? There's nothing better for me, a guy, when I'm at a restaurant here locally in town, and either a former client or somebody who I don't know may recognize me from videos or YouTube or wherever, and they'll come over and just have a chat for a minute or two. We were at a function this weekend, my brother's daughter, my niece's bat mitzvah party. One of the police officers assigned to do detail for the venue was a former client of David's from over 10 years ago. Came over and started talking to David, big pat on the shoulder. They ended up giving each other a big hug, hello, and goodbye. And it just made, and on top of such a great event for my brother, that made his day. He's still thinking about that and talking about it. But you're right. It does take a certain mindset as lawyers, doctors, clergy, anybody who does something professional where you work with the public. You got to keep in mind, why do you do what you do? And it's not forced. Those communications that I see with you in our groups, Mo in our groups, you're not putting on airs, as I've heard many times. It's not a different personality when you're off screen versus on screen. It is who you are.
Right. And that's what's so good about this age. You've been practicing almost 30 years, right? Or 25 years?
Just at 25. Mm-hmm.
Just 25 years. And I've been practicing 20 years, and this is a second career. For all the things that we hear bad about technology, we're all addicted to our phones. We're all addicted to it. There's so much good. There's so much good that you are in Birmingham and I'm outside Orlando and we're chatting like we were over lunch. Right. A few months ago, you had a client that needed to testify who lived in my area. It was just so cool that they could come to my office and testify in a matter that you were handling in Alabama and get that done. We're living in a great time, We really are. In spite of all the rhetoric that we hear out and all the garbage on Fox and CNN and MS, we are just living in a really cool time. I mean, when I get done with you today at 12 o'clock Eastern time, I have a deposition of an accident reconstructionist in Tallahassee. Tallahassee is 4 hours from me. I'm going to sit here. That's why I have my microphone set up. I'm going to sit here in the same place right now and handle this deposition, as opposed to getting into my car, driving 4 hours to Tallahassee, sitting there for an hour and a half in deposition, and driving back. That costs my time. It costs my client, maybe not money because I'm contingency fee, but the other side. Now, the other lawyer is just a couple years older than me, and he's drove up to Tallahassee from West Palm Beach.
Wow.
Because he was sort of an old school guy, and he wants to be there. It's my expert. Listen, my expert can handle themselves. The other guy's a great lawyer. He's articulate. He doesn't, cut any corners. It's going to be just fine. So we live in a great time when it comes to that.
And in our technology age that we're in, and it's always, if not every day, every week, every month, there are new products coming out, new ways to make our lives easier. A lot of times, until you get used to it, it makes your life a little more difficult. But one of the great things that I like about what you just said is at any point in time, you can step away from all of this. You can turn it off, and you cannot be overloaded. On the other hand, if you're really into this and you've got the energy and this is what makes you happy, you stay in it as full as you want to be connected online. And for those of you just joining us, and we appreciate you stopping by for a few minutes, I've got my buddy, attorney, Dr. Priest, Guy DiMartino out of his Florida office. And we're not talking about anything in particular in the law, but what we are talking about is a little bit about your why. Why do you do what you do? Your backstory about how you got to where you are, and how appreciative we are for those online communities that we both belong to. They certainly have helped push my career forward. They certainly have helped my practice, my law firm. It's de-stressed my life greatly. I'm looking for new projects. I would never have thought, Guy, 2 years ago, that I've got a weekly online show that I do that you're on right now. And I'm about to start a second one on YouTube Live with my brother later this month and continue to do this. And we push it out to podcasts, and I could go on and on. But who would have thought that the practice of law, instead of just being day-to-day, pushing paper, meeting with clients, and being on the phone, would evolve to all of this? And I'm pleased. I'm tickled that it does.
And so even though our practices or our practice areas, probably yours a little more than mine, are hyper-local, you know what I mean? Because work comp is a state-based thing, and except for my civil rights practice, it's sort of a state-based type of practice. It's still great to have a community with people all over the world. We have folks that we chat with from Australia, on the other side of the pond, in England. And so we really are all connected. And the advice that we get, for the practice of law, or, how to do this technology, or, we in a lot of our groups now, we have fitness ends where people are, working to get fitness. I've been following Mo for a year. Mo is doing a fantastic job with his fitness, and it's been a journey watching him. So it just has so much to offer. And I'm just grateful for all the folks that I have met. And then when I come face to face with them at a conference every once in a while, it's like, hey, I know you. How is your dog? How is, your kid doing? Things like that.
Tell me Mo's son Wyatt isn't known by several hundred lawyers in our organization, in our groups that we belong to. And our buddy Mitch just joined us. Good morning, Mitch. Hope you're doing well out west. And he's one of the two he founded Legal Minds that we belong to, and he's intricately involved in Maximum Lawyer that we're also involved in. And each June we all get together in St. Louis for Jim and Tyson's big conference, and that's so much fun to me. The first year it was like drinking from a fire hose, trying to learn everything and how am I going to integrate? What am I going to put in my practice? Then we go to it this past year. I've learned so much in the past year because of those two groups. It was more about enjoying my time and spending quality time with my friends. And I'm already looking forward to and preparing what I'm going to say next year in June of 2020 at the conference. I'm already looking forward to that. And that's what I'm so appreciative about both of these groups and the friendships that we've made over the last couple of years in these two different groups.
I agree. I'm looking forward to what you have to say next year, too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Guys, if you're just joining us, I've got Guy DiMartino, and we're just talking about all kind of different things. We're talking about why we do what we do and our appreciation for the organizations that we're in, and really how technology is changing the practice of law. I'm sure it's changing in other professions as well. I don't have those experiences. I can just share what I do in my legal career. But it just seems like at times it makes life so much easier to communicate, to get things accomplished.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like in this context right now, I mean, we're looking at each other face to face. It's like we're having a face-to-face conversation. It's like all the thousands of people who are watching your Facebook Live right now, we don't even know that they exist. They're just sitting over our shoulders like we're having a chat right before lunch.
That's right. That's right. And Guy, one of the great things that I now appreciate, FaceTiming on your phone is so common that I have clients who live 2, 3, 4 hours away in different parts of our state. Instead of them coming all the way to my office or me going all the way to them to prepare for their deposition, which is usually about an hour's worth of communication with the client, I not only send them videos to watch that we've made and keep on our YouTube channel, but then I'll do a FaceTime session with them, with me sitting at my desk, them in their house, and it just makes that ability to do what I need to do so much easier on both parties. It really, really helps out.
Absolutely. And so folks, and so what we've been able to do is we can give folks whatever they want. If they want to come in and see you, great. If they want to do a video chat, they can do a video chat. Right. Forget about the clients, though. This weekend, I'm in Florida. I got to FaceTime with my grandbaby. You know what I mean?
That's
and it's
right.
just,
Right.
trying to get them to sit still. But it's like, I never had that. If I was, when we moved to Florida, I still had grandparents in New York. So I would see them once or twice, a year. But if you're, with things like FaceTime and WhatsApp, if you're on Android and, things along those lines, you're able to keep those communications. So you not only do it with your clients, you can do it with your family, you can do it with your friends, so it's really cool.
Well, Mitch throws a question out that I'll answer first is what's been the most rewarding thing for each of us have experienced as lawyers because of law and technology? And I've partly explained that as we've been talking here, but I'll tell you one of the cool things that we started doing several years ago, and we need to get back to it, haven't done it as much, but we've been able to see them in person, I guess, is Friday night is my favorite time of each week. It's that time of the week where we as a family come together, whoever's in town, and we have dinner together at one of the family's homes. And it's just a 2 to 3, 4 hours of relaxation, reliving the week, just letting your hair down and just chilling out as we're bringing in the weekend and the Sabbath. And I have always loved that and always tried to maintain that as a tradition. Well, I have a brother who lives in Richmond, Virginia. My mom is here. My brother and his family are here, so we usually get together. And as you know, Guy, when you have Shabbos dinner, you'll say some weekly prayers, wine, bread, etc. And so we'll FaceTime them in so we can do that together as a family. And I have always loved that. If I can't be in person with my family, at least having that technology to be together, I've always loved that.
Yep, and that's great on a personal note, and I discussed my personal note. Mitch, in the way of practice, the biggest reward that I've seen with technology is this. Having a litigation practice before we were just, bombarded with having to go to status conferences, having to travel. Florida's a big state. I mean, if you're going from Miami to the Panhandle, That's like a day drive.
Yeah.
So the technology is such, like I said earlier, as soon as I get done with Bernard, I'm going to hook on a Zoom conference and I'm going to be attending a deposition, which is 4 hours away, which is just so much, it's just so much easier. And so, and the courts now, I know that in Bernard's area of the world, it's not happened yet. We can attend simple, uncontested hearings by telephone. So it's just, the technology has just helped, and it made the stress. Because imagine the stress of having to worry about what time you have to arrive in an area that's 4 or 5 hours away for either a court hearing. You never know what's going to happen with traffic. You never know if there's going to be an accident. You don't know if you have kids to get ready for school. So you're able to manage your time and manage your life. And one of the things about litigation lawyers is that a lot of times we can't manage our time. So the technology helps us so much more. I hope that answers your question, Mitch.
Keeping in mind, Guy, that your time, I know you've got a deposition coming up in a little bit, so we're going to conclude with this. I know you love cooking. Coming over to dinner at your house this weekend is Mitch, Mo, Chelsea, Stephen, and my mother. What are you making us for dinner?
So, since right now I've jumped back really hard into keto, we're having flesh. So for your mom, I'm making a brisket, and for you. And for the big guys like Mo and Mitch, I think we're going to have some ribeyes. And I'm gonna prepare them first in the sous vide, and then we'll just either pan fry them or grill them just to get the char on it, and then we'll have some good vegetables. Right now, I'm following this program called 75 Hard. So for y'all, I'll have some single malt scotch. I'll have some wine, but I'm not partaking in any alcohol for 75 days, and I'm only in day 9. So we'll see how that goes. How does that work for you?
That's perfect. Chelsea, I'm not sure if you're a meat eater or not, but you're certainly invited to this dinner that I'm inviting you at Guy's. Guy, I can't thank you enough. What a fun conversation. What a great 30 minutes. I really appreciate your time today.
I really appreciate being here. And Bernard, it's always great getting with you. Now that your daughter's not at Rawlings anymore, we can't go to barbecue in Winter Park, but I guess the next time I see you will be in June, at least face to face.
I hope it's before then, but if not, I'll see you in June. Guys, this will conclude us for today for another episode of Nomberg Law Live. We sure appreciate your comments. Anybody who is watches us or is interested, we come to you every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. Coach Andrews, I'm sorry I'm catching you at the very end of our show, but I hope you're doing well in the Florida Panhandle. And guys, this will do it for today. We hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next Tuesday. Be well.